Hey guys, this is Allison from Allykatkreations. How are you? Please like, share, and subscribe if you haven't done so already. I really appreciate it. If you get anything from my work, a connect a dot, a mic drop moment, an epiphany, a new author to read, a new book to explore, please consider helping me out. All the links are in the drop box below. So the last 2 days have been insane. I get a letter, well, an email. I wish I got a letter from the attorney that's working with me with the house that all this stuff, I have to produce all this documentation, which I have, but I had to go find original mortgage papers from when my parents bought my house. And then I have to prove that I am the only child and heir to my house. And I'm just like, I already did this when my mother died 6 years ago. Almost 6 years. So why the hell am I doing this again? Everything is in my name. I pay all the taxes, the mortgage is done, it's been done, and I had a, oh my gosh. So that took a whole day of me going back and forth with death certificates and mortgages, all this stuff. Drives me crazy. And they should have asked this now a month ago. Why now are you asking for this stuff? You should have asked for it a month ago. So this is like holding me up. I don't like it. Then today, I finally get to go to the auto mechanic, and holy crap, FML. Big time. I'm like in the negative depletion of depletions. And then I get a letter from the property tax that the most likely will put a lien on my house too. I'm just ignoring the 3D matrix at this point because I really am done. I don't care anymore. I don't know how much more I could take. I don't know. But I do want to thank everybody who has been contributing to keeping me fed and alive. I think that's more important than anything else. And I did need my car fixed because that's how I'm going to get to my location. So I needed that to be safe for me to drive. Yeah. Credit cards, gotta love them. It did not mean that. Oahspe. Could say I'm heated. Book of Fragapatti, son of Jehovah. We left off of the book of God's word and then the other part. So I'm going to read again. I'm going to start at chapter 4. We left off on 3 on both. I'm going to do book of God's word, chapter 4, and I'm going to read, and then I'm going to swap back up. So I don't want anybody confused. This is a very big undertaking chapter. So, and I do apologize. I haven't been on. Just life, archons, negative entities, demons trying to dim my light once again. You can't dim my light no more. Chapter 4. Book of God's Word. When Sokwi the king issued the decree to have Zarathustra found and brought before him, otherwise all the male infants of Oahspe to be slain. Now, all loving God wouldn't do that, would they? The Lord's sent travail on the king's wife and on the king's daughter, wife of Asha, the philosopher, and the 2 women gave birth that same day to 2 sons, a month before their time, but nevertheless unto life and strength and beauty. Now, according to the laws of Oahspe, a king could not rescind or change his own decree, for he had assumed the position of infallibility, whereupon he had doomed to death kin of his kin, flesh of his flesh. Accordingly, after search had been made in vain to find Zarathustra, the king repented of his decree, but knew no way to justify a change of commandment. Asha, hearing of this, came out of concealment, saying to himself, "Now will I go to the king and hold him to his decree, even demanding that he slay me also." So Asha came before Sokwi, after saluting, said, "O king, I have heard of thy strait, and I come to thee that I may counsel thee." The king was angered and said, "Asha, my friend, hear thou thy king. Thou camest before me relating a marvelous story regarding an infant son of a virgin who saith she never knew a man. Now, according to the laws of the city of the sun, any man stating for truth that which he cannot prove is already adjudged to death. Shall not the law be fulfilled, because forsooth thou art near me in blood?" Asha said, "Most assuredly, O king, the laws must be carried out. Are they not the highest? For it followeth that man, being the all highest person, his laws above all else must never be set aside. Therefore thou shalt have me slain. Think not I am come before thee to plead an excuse in order to save myself. Rather let all men perish, that the king's decrees go amiss." The king said, "Thou art wise, O Asha. The laws cannot err, for they are the standard by which to judge all else. And he who hath risen to be king standeth by nature the infallible highest of all things. History hath proven this. But ye hear me. Thou who hast wisdom from the movements of the sun and moon and stars, the king being the all highest, how can he be bound? Cannot he decree new decrees forever?" Asha said, "I will not deceive thee, O king. I know thou art arguing not for me, but for thy own infant son, and that for thy daughter's infant son. Neither have I come before thee prowess, therefore I love life. But here is the matter. If thou charge one law, thou admittest that all laws made by man may also need changing, which is to say, wisdom is folly. How then shall the judge judge any man by the laws? It is not setting up error in order to find truth." The king said, "Thou reasonest well. Methink this morning in my walk in the market gardens, when the soldiers were spreading the scalps of their enemies in the sun to dry, whether or no it ages to come, the weaker nations and tribes and men might not attempt to justify their right to life. And where the kings to admit fallibility in their decrees and laws, no man can foresee the end, for even slaves and servants and women will rise up against the laws and claim their right to life. Wherein then would the earth be large enough for all the people? Yet wherefore, O Asha, cometh this heartache of mine against killing my own son?" Asha said, "What are thy sympathies, O king? If thou wert to justify the escape of thy child's death for sympathy, would not my wife and my children justify their sympathy in desiring me to live? Nay, sympathy is the enemy of the law and justice. It is the evil in our natures that crieth out for the evil. The laws must be maintained, the decrees must be maintained, the king's word must be maintained. No man must suffer his judgment to go higher than the law or the decree of the king." Asha said, "This is the city of the sun. If this city goeth back on its own laws, what will not the tributary cities do? Will not they also begin to disrespect thy laws, or say, perhaps the laws are in error? This will come to anarchy. To one purpose only can a great city be maintained. To divide the purposes and judgment of men is to scatter to the four winds the glory of our civil liberty. Was it not disrespect of the laws combined with superstition and caused the nations of ancients to perish?" The king said, "What shall I do, O Asha, my son? Hath smiled in my face." Asha said, "Thou shalt send me and thy son and thy daughter's son and all male infants to the slaughter pen, and have us all beheaded and cast into the fire. Otherwise it will come true that the infant Zarathustra hath said, Behold, my hand shall smite the city of Oahspe, and shall fall as a heap of straw. Think not, O king, I am superstitious and fear such threats. But this I perceive, suffer the laws to be impeached, and every man is in us will be set up to interpret the laws to be wrong and himself right. And thy officers will rebel against thee on all sides, and the glory of thy kingdom will perish. After the city had been searched for 30 days, and the virgin and child not found, the king appointed a day for the slaughter according to his former decree, and there were 90,000 male infants adjudged to death, the king's son amongst the rest. While as these matters were maturing, the Lord went to Shojong and inspired him to make songs about Zarathustra, the infant that was stronger than a king, and also songs about the decree of the death to the 90,000 infant sons of Oahspe. The beauty of the songs, together with the nature of these proceedings, caused the songs to be sung in the streets day and night, and the songs in satire approved of the horrors, so that even the king could not interdict the singing. Chapter 5. When the day arrived for the slaughter of the male infants, not more than 1,000 mothers appeared at the place of execution with their infants. The others having risen in the night previous and departed out of the gates, upward 89,000 mothers. When the king went to the place of execution, having set apart the day as a holiday, and not finding but 1,000 infants present, he required the reason, and having been told, he said, Can it be that mothers love their offspring more than they respect the decrees of the king? Oahspe was standing near, having stripped himself ready for execution, and he answered the king, saying, Because they love their offspring, it is not the love of the flesh, and doth not the law stand above all flesh? In this matter, then, because they have evaded the law, they have adjudged themselves also to death. Then came Betrei, the king's wife, bringing in the infant. Betrei said, Here is thy son, O king, ready for the sacrifice. Oahspe reasoneth well. There must be an all highest which never err, which is the law of the king. Take thou thy flesh and blood and prove thy decrees. What? Why hesitate? If thou swerve one jot or tittle, then shalt thou open the door for all men to find an excuse against thy law? Doth not the sun blight a harvest when he will? Yeah, and strike dead our most beloved. Art thou not descended from the sun gods, who will obey the laws if thou thys do not? Thy king said, Behold, it is yet early morn. Let the officers go fetch all who have escaped beyond the walls, and both mothers and children shall be put to death. Till then, let the proceedings be suspended. Now there had congregated a vast multitude, anxious to witness the slaughter. And when the king suspended matters, there went up cries of disappointment, and many said, When a thing toucheth the king, he is coward. The king returned to his palace, leaving Oahspe standing stripped for execution, and the multitude cried out, More is Oahspe like a king than Soqui. Let us make him king. King Soqui, we will not have a sheep for a king, and none could stay them, or be heard above their noise. And they ran after the king and slew him with stones. And her heavens, to rest thyself. And they made Oahspe king of the sun. And there was not one infant slain according to the decrees. God saith, Think not, O man, that things happen without a cause, or that all things are left to chance. In my works I go beforehand and plan thy way, even more carefully than a captain layeth siege to a city. Before Zarathustra was born, I sent Ashars to choose out my personages. Think not that Oahspe made his own arguments, but by virtue of presence of my Ashars, whom he saw not, he spake and behaved in my commandments, not knowing it. And even so was it with the king's wife. My angels also inspired her to speak before the king. And those that fled out of the city were inspired by my hosts and angels. God said, Yet With the king's decree I had no part, for I foresaw he would do this of his own will. And with the multitude in slaying the king I had no part, for I saw they would do this on their own account. Neither would the multitude hear my voice, even though I had spoken to every man's soul, for in them tetrarchs were the ascendant power. God saith, the multitude slew the king, because he had gone so far from me, he needed him not. And I made Oahspe king, because he came so near me, my power was with him, my Ashars. See what happens. Chapter 6. During the infant age of Zarathustra, God manifested no more through him, but he sent Elijah, one of his lords, to be with Zarathustra day and night. And I want to say Eha taught the infant wisdom in all things, but showed himself to none else. When Zarathustra was yet a child, the Lord began to manifest through him, giving signs and miracles and prophecy before the Lycians who lived in the forest of goats. This forest was of width in every direction, save the east, and 40 days journey for a man. In all that region there were no houses, the inhabitants living in tents made of bark and skins. The Lord inspired Zarathustra to teach them to build houses and tame the goats, and to live in cities, and otherwise subdue the earth through righteousness, the chief center of their inhabitants being on the river Amphitryon and its tributaries. And it was from these inhabitants that sprang in after years the migrants called Phoenicians, signifying out of the mountains. Nevertheless, these people were Ihuans, but because of the cruelties of the Parisian kings, they fled and lived in the forests. The Lord said to Zarathustra, behold the people who fly from the kings. I had made them kings over goats and over the beasts of the fields. And from this time forth, the Lycians styled themselves shepherd kings. And Zarathustra taught them of the Lord, that man should have dominion over the beasts of the forest, but that no man should hold dominion over his neighbors. Consequently, every man of the Lycians styled himself a king, and every woman styled herself a queen. Again, the Lord said to Zarathustra, go thou, my son, whither I will lead thee, and thou shalt find a people sacred to the Great Spirit. So Zarathustra wandered beyond the forest of goats and came to Harawachai, to the south of the mountain of Otihala, where 3 large cities and 12 small ones inhabited Ihans. And the Lord had been with the Ihans and foretold them Zarathustra was coming, so that it was proven on both sides. The Lord said to the high priest, thou shalt suffer Zarathustra to come within the walls of the cities, for he is pure. So Zarathustra went in, and in the time of worship before the altar of God, the Lord appeared in a great light and commanded the high priest, saying, behold, I have brought my son to thee. Him shalt thou anoint as a priest according to the Ihan laws, and thou shalt teach him the rites and ceremonies of the ancients. Accordingly, Zarathustra was made a priest, and was otherwise accepted as an Ihan, and bestowed under the rod with water with fire. And he also taught the secret words in the art of writing and making tablets, and of weaving cloth and making clothes from flax. 7 years Zarathustra remained with the Ihans, fasting and praying and singing and dancing before the Lord. And then the Lord commanded him to return through the forest of goats, the which he did, teaching before the Lycians, whithersoever he halted for a rest, and the Lord was with him, working miracles. At the end of another 7 years, the Lord said to Zarathustra, behold, the dawn of light is come. Thou shalt therefore bestow my mother with thy people, and I will lead thee to the city of thy birth. Zarathustra said, tell me, O Lord, of the city of my birth. The Lord said, it was a great city, but it shall fall before thy hand. For Ihuna Mazda hath turned his favor away from its kings. In 2 days' journey, Zarathustra came to Oahspe and entered into the city. He brought no provender with him. Now it was a law of Oahspe that all strangers coming into the city should bring provender as a testimony of fidelity to the laws to the king. So when he came to the inner gate, the keeper asked him for a provender. But Zarathustra answered him, saying, Naked I come into the world, and Orsman asked me not for a provender. Is thy king greater than the creator? The keeper said, I know not thy word. Shall a servant explain laws? To which Zarathustra said, Thou art wise, neither shalt thou suffer for disobedience in letting me pass. The Lord will give thee food. When he had spoken thus, there fell at the feet of the keeper an abundance of fruit, and the keeper feared and stood aside, suffering Zarathustra to pass in. The keeper not only told the people of the miracle, but ran and told the king likewise. This was Asha, who had reigned since the death of Sokwi. And Asha no sooner heard of the miracle, which he imagined the person to be the same whom he had seen in infancy. Asha the king sent officers at once to find Zarathustra and bring him before the court. But the Lord, knowing these things, inspired Zarathustra to go on his own account. And he went accordingly before the king, even before the officers returned. The king said, Who art thou, and for what purpose thou come before the king? Then spake Ihuna Mazda through Zarathustra, saying, I am Ihuna Mazda, king and god of the Ihuns. He through I speak is Zarathustra, whom thou sawest in his mother's arms. We twain are one. I have come before thee, O king, because of 2 reasons. Thou hast sent for me, and I desire to use thee. The king said, Speak further, stranger, that I may approve of thy words. In the time of Sokwi, said Ihuna Mazda, I made thee king of Oahspe. And from that day to this, Ashars have been with thee and heard thee oft praying privately for information of the infant thou sawest. For it resteth heavily on thy judgment whether or not man be immortal. Sit thou with me this nightly privy, and I will show thee Sokwi's spirit. Asha said, They were to smite the city, and it would fall. Behold, standeth, yet I desire not to stand in my own light. Then Zarathustra spake on his own accord, saying, Fear not, O king, for this philosophy. As thou wouldest bend a straw, so do the gods wield the nations of the earth. The city will fall ere 6 years pass, and thou shalt be reduced to beggary, and thou shalt be happier than now. Really interesting there. Chapter 4, the book of Fragapatti. Jehovah said, Hear, O my son Fragapatti, hear, in Harati have I laid the foundation of thy kingdom. Make fast here thy fire ship 5 years and 50 days. Call forth thy hosts, build they a throne of my throne. The voice of thy creator is with thee. Fragapatti said, Throne of thy throne, O Jehovah, here will I build. Harati shall be my headquarters for the dawn of Dan. Come forth, all ye gods of dawn. Come forth, all ye goddesses of dawn. Hear the voice of the Son of Jehovah. Bow down, O ye heavens. The ship was anchored, and 10 millions came forth and assembled in the living altar. Fragapatti raised his hands, saying, Throne of thy throne, O Jehovah. And the hosts raised their hands, and the elements took shape, a majesty rising into a throne brilliant as fire. Then Fragapatti ascended and sat on the throne, saying, Glory be to thee, O Father the highest. A light came down from the Ethereal firmament and covered the throne over with a canopy wide enough for 5 million men to sit under, and at the borders of the canopy, the Ethereans, whose work it fell to, set up columns of crystals, opaque and transparent, illuminated in all possible colors and shades and tints. Fragapatti said, from thy council chamber, O Jehovah, will I build to thee forever. And now the hosts and gods and goddesses held up their arms, lifting and casting in, and lo and behold, there rose and stood the habitable Moru, council chamber and capital of Harati. Then to prayers all hands turned, glorifying the Father, then in singing with praise. After which Fragapatti said, in thy name and by thy power and wisdom, O Jehovah, will I now establish heaven anew over the earth. My marshals shall now proceed down to the earth and command the presence of the God and his lords, and all such others as can endure this light. They shall hear my voice and learn my decrees. 10,000 marshals saluting departed for the earth and regions below. Fragapatti said, meanwhile, I will appoint my high council of the first house of Moru, gods and goddesses of dawn. Hear me then in the name of Jehovah, the all light. Koaka, god of Arim, Atakasha, god of Beratis, Ariyama, god of Karus, Parthemia, goddess of Ron, Maid Haraya, mistress of Karim, Gatha Aryuvanati, goddess of Hal-Oji, Rama Quiatra, god of Aries, Vihista, god of Volu, Aryam Ishia, god of Ikisi, the Mazdias, Heptanhatari, god of Sumatras, Yima, god of Ayam, Sudga, god of Laka. Oh boy, this goes on for a whole paragraph. Sorry, guys. Sorry, I'm butchering this. God of Bakai Dai, Alikik, goddess of Sirius, Parvati, goddess of Hatmat, In Ig, Duz, goddess of Varanthigina, Wittimati, goddess of Daima, Quaactra, goddess of Enigma, Ejima, Ustavi, goddess of Maha Maru, Kura, goddess of Korinia, Yeni, goddess of Akka, Kaios Shinto, god of Albiet, Rothwaska, god of Hari, Simptas, goddess, god of butts, literally god of butts, Varayu, god of Nuga Gala, Dizota, and her brother Zata, god and goddesses of Artvesha, Wrath, which can't that wow, that's too long, and I'm not butchering that. God of Nis, Yatha, god of Amishaz, Kenha, god of Swarak. Fragapatti said, O Jehovah, behold the glory of my house. I have chosen only such as have ruled over the whole world. Was ever a god so favored with such a counsel? Was ever so great a light sent to a small world as the red star? Jehovah said, as I have created man to need relaxation at times, so I have carried the same conditions to be desired by my highest of gods. Neither have I exalted any god so high, but the most menial office is his glory. Neither shall our autocrat learn sympathy to liven with the beggar, nor the highest best man learn love and tenderness without taking a season in the depths of misery. Fragapatti said, shall the strong man forgive? He was once a child. Can an Orion chief forget he was once a slave? Can he that is the light forget them that are in the dark? Mighty art thou, O Jehovah. I came to the earth and her heavens to rest myself in thy service, but thou wert here before me. Thy voice riseth up to rebuke me. Yeah, I am still but a child to thee. Chapter 5. When Fragapatti had selected both departments of his council, which comprised 100,000 souls, he said, "When a god espouseth the new kingdom, it is customary for him to create his own capital and to fix the boundaries of his lights and hall of audience. But when he hath gods and goddesses for his assistants, it is meet and proper for them to help in the buildings. In this case, I give into your hands to provide this realm." Hardly had his words gone forth when the gods and goddesses stretched forth their hands unto Jehovah, and lo and behold, the elements of the plateau had took shape, and there stood the canopy of a new kingdom. Then again they stretched forth their hands to Jehovah, and were and then again they stretched their hands to Jehovah, and there came the walls of the house of heaven, and yet again they stretched forth their hands to Jehovah, and there came the floor and foundation. And the house was called the house of Moru, the place of the throne of Fragapatti in the lower heavens. On the plains beyond the house, Fragapatti created 1,000 fields and pastures. In each and every one, he created 10,000 mansions, and every mansion was capable of 1,000 souls. With roadways from one to another, Fragapatti created them, his hosts being the workmen in the wisdom and power of Jehovah. While this work was going on, the marshals who went down to the earth returned, bringing God and his lords with them, and also bringing with them 1,200,000 spirits of second resurrection. Fragapatti commanded them to bring God and his lords into the house of Meru, and they were so brought. Fragapatti said, "In the name of Jehovah, I salute thee, O God, and thy lords and thy hosts." God said, "In thy name, O Jehovah, I am, and my lords and my hosts, blessed with the great joy thou, O Fragapatti, hast come to redeem the earthbound and the spirits of these heavens, is a joyful period in the time of worlds." The Lord said, "For ourselves and our hosts, O Jehovah, do we thank thy son Fragapatti." Fragapatti said, "That thou, O God, mightiest, know my decrees. I commanded thee and thy lords and thy exalted hosts hither. Help me then, and to whom I send thee, do thou my commandments. In the name of Jehovah, the time hath come when mortals on the earth shall begin their lessons in spiritual things, proven, being themselves made part in the building of Jehovah's kingdoms. Through thee, the present reigning God of the earth and her heavens must be carried out to the death and resurrection of thy chosen heir, Zarathustra, to prove first that man on the corporal earth can live, all pure and without sin. Second, that corporal death belongeth to the earth body of man, and not to the spirit. And third, that after death, the same person can rise in spirit and appear in mortals, to be seen and known, after which he shall show his final ascent toward the upper heavens in the arms of his God. Whilst thou cometh upon thee in person to carry out, thou shalt also, through the ministering angels, prove to the mortals the advantage of virtue and truth over sin and darkness. For thou shalt cause also to be stricken in death 2 evil men who are all impure, and they shall suffer death at the same time with the heir Zarathustra, but these shall not have power of themselves to appear before mortals after death. For mortals shall hereafter be a testimony to one another, and of the reward of virtue, and the power of being one with the gods and sons of Jehovah. But since all attestation by spirits can be set at defiance by the craft of philosophers, thou shalt not wait till after the death of thy heir to teach the truths of the Father's kingdoms, but beforehand, causing Zarathustra, wireless yet mortal, to write down rules of mortal life and doctrines of faith and repentance and praise of the Great Spirit and of the prophecy and all manner of righteous gifts, and the power of miracles and the triumph of the spirit of man over corporal elements. And when thou hast completed these things, thou shalt bring the spirit of Zarathustra to this house. But the Droops who suffer death with him, thou shalt deliver in the usual way to the places prepared for their resurrection. Tell me then, how standeth thy heir, and ask thou of me whatsoever thou wilt to assist thee to carry out thee my decrees, and it shall be granted unto thee. God said, Zarathustra hath obtained his 20th year, and that comprehendeth the destiny put upon him. He is pure and wise, with faith and gentleness, but he is larger than, more powerful than any other man in the world. He is instructed both in the spiritual and the corporal senses, having a knowledge of the books of the ancients and of the writings, and making tablets. Fragapatti said, 5 years shalt thou have in which to complete thy labor. Depart therefore to thy place, taking with thee such of thy lords and hosts as thou mayest require. I will appoint 1,000 messengers to travel betwixt thy place and this, and that every day thou shalt ask for this or that, it shall be granted unto thee. To which God replied, I will go now and cause Zarathustra to write a book of wisdom, and give him prophecy over the kings of nations and tribes of men. What do I shall be given to thee? In Moru, thus saying, God withdrew a little and selected his lords and such other assistants to be desired. And after this, Fragapatti granted a day of resurrection, in which time the Etherians were made well acquainted with the conditions of the mortals, of the thousands of millions of spirits, still lingering in the first resurrection and in the darkness and chaos. On the next day, God and his host departed for the earth, and well attended by thousands of volunteers from the Etherian sojourners of Hattadi. Chapter 6. Fragapatti said, the voice of Jehovah cometh to me, saying, my son, appoint thou an assistant chief to sit on thy throne, and go thou around about atmosphere, taking surveyors and inspectors with thee, for thou shalt see with thine own eyes the condition of thousands and millions of spirits in Hada. Fragapatti said, in Jehovah's name, I announce Athrava, my assistant god of Maru. There was great rejoicing in the council at this. Then came Athrava forward and ascended Jehovah's throne, and sat on the right side of Fragapatti. Etherian lights fell upon the place from every side, and Fragapatti gathered from the elements and made a crown for Athara and crowned him. Officers and workmen were sent to build a conveyance for Fragapatti and for such attendants as he might take with him. So the next day Fragapatti chose his companions, 30,000, making Thrangna speaker, and he and I departed for the inspection of Hada and this earth. His ship was built without lights or curtains, so they might travel unobserved. First he inspected the plateau of Harvati, which prior to this had never been inhabited, and he found its distance from the earth was equal to 10 diameters of the earth, and its east and west and north and south diameters corresponded in size to what the earth would be were it the volume, that is to say, the superficie of the plateau was 528,000 miles in every direction. And the ratio of the number of mortals on the earth, this plateau would inhabit 528,000 million souls. And yet this was not the thousandth part of the number it could sustain. In fact, within and without. Fragapatti said, such in Harati, O Jehovah, and yet there have been till now no spirits to come and inhabit it. Who can survey thy works, O Father? Who shall fear for the limit of thy handiwork? Varatharangna said, and yet we shall find in the lowest Hadas spirits huddled together like bees in a hive. And yet therefore, O chief, for it is not with so mortals also. They cluster together in cities and tribes, warring for inches of ground, while as vast divisions of the earth lie waste and vacant. Fragapatti said, this is not the sum of the darkness of mortals and spirits in the lowest realms. They know not how to live, a spider or an ant, in more than one creator than these. Next they visited Zenrandho, 6 diameters of the earth distance. Here they found a colony of 2,000 million spirits that had been found by the Oahspe 3,300 years before. but not the same people, but such as came up from the earth afterward. They had a god named Hob, an atmospherian from the earth 2,100 years, and he was upright and wise and of good works, most excellent, but knowing nothing of Etheria, had no ambition to rise thither, and his content had visited him itself on the colony, and they were contented also. Fragapatti said, to remain here forever, is this the extent of thy desires, O Hob? And Hob answered him, saying, here, master, what more is life than to reach the highest place and remain there? To which Fragapatti said, is this the highest, all highest? And Hob said, yeah, master, any place and condition in the all highest, if man make it so. None can obtain higher than I, no people higher than my people. We are freed from the earth and Hada, and we desire not to return thither, nor to go any other place. Fragapatti said, let us walk a little, that I may see thy kingdom. Horeb consented, and they walked along, seeing the inhabitants lying at ease, some amusing themselves, waving threads of light, then unraveling them and weaving them over again. Others playing with crystals and lenses and opaque and transparent elements, but no, not one doing anything for another, nor in fact needed they, for all were capable of doing for themselves. Now after they had traveled a while, Fragapatti said, hast thou not, O Horeb, a desire to return to the plateau below thee, where the inhabitants are in misery and darkness, and bring them into thy own realm? To which Horeb said, nay, master, let them shift for themselves, even if we help them up, they would be thankless. Nay, my doctrine is, man is the highest of all things. The elements are dumb. The worlds are many and wide. Let man choose a corner for himself, and there settle forever. Fragapatti asked, because a man chooseth a corner, is it necessarily his own? Horeb said, our place has bequeathed us by our forefathers. Of course, it is ours, and to remain so forever. Neither suffer we any other spirits to settle in our dominions. Being far away from the rest of the world, we are not much molested. Fragapatti said, how come ye hither? Horeb said, long ago there came a god hither, named Oahspe, bringing 6,000 million Judras up from the earth. With them he founded a colony here with factories, colleges, hospitals, and all things necessary to enlighten the people, giving them ample teachers. In course of time, many of the inhabitants migrated away from this place, and it was almost depleted of its people. But the gods below this sent new supplies of inhabitants, of which we are second and third installments. So we inherited the place with all its factories and educationals and other places. Fragapatti said, as ye were raised up by the gods of other places, would it not give ye joy to raise up others who are still in the darkness? Horeb said, nay, master, we are pure and refined. The atmosphere of Judras is unpleasant to us. They would violate our own happiness, besides entrailing toil and responsibilities upon us. We cannot mix with any other people, but the refined and holy. We take care of ourselves, let others do the same, and we are well, be well. Fragapatti said, who thinkest thou I am, and my people with me? Horeb said, visitors from some far-off realm, who are either discordant with yourselves or bent to meddle in the affairs of other peoples. We had visitors before, and we never grieve when they leave us. To which Fragapatti replied, thou art strong in thy philosophy, had no nation or people such ambition as this, there would be no content in the world to be satisfied with one's own self and behavior as to be a god in fact. Hadst thou nothing to fear from immigration coming to thy shore, or to fear from new philosophy undermining thy long-established convictions, thou mightest indeed be the happiest of gods, and thy people the happiest of people. Horeb said, true, thou perceivest wisely, oh, that there was nothing to fear, nothing to dread forever. Then Fragapatti said, and I declare unto thee, Horeb, that the condition could be obtained, for I have seen kingdoms in heaven so fortified, and wert thou and thy people prepared to receive the sacred secrets pertaining thereto. I would most willingly unfold them before thee. Horeb said, Thou art a wise God, tarry thou and teach us. Fragapatti said, I am now on a journey and cannot remain longer, but on one condition I will return hither and disclose these matters, so that never more that shall fear for immigration into thy country, nor for any philosophy which any man or God may teach, exact a promise of secrecy from all thy people. Horeb said, It shall be done. And Fragapatti and his host withdrew and departed upon that plateau, promising to return with no notification had been served on his people. But Fragapatti inspected the whole superfice and found it capable of educating and providing for 100,000 million spirits, whereas there were but 2,000 million in Horeb's kingdom, and there inhabited only a small corner of the plateau. Nevertheless, Horeb laid claim to the whole. After this, Fragapatti descended to the next plateau, the first grade plateau above the earth, called Oahspe, signifying land and sky world for the first spirit life after mortal death. Oahspe hath its foundation on the earth and is undulated with the mountains and valleys, like the earth having seas over the corporeal seas. And the outer superfice of Oahspe is 20 to 100 miles above the earth's surface, and it's habitable within and without, about the manner of all spirit worlds. But the first resurrection were within it and on the earth's surface, and the second resurrections mostly on its surface through all atmosphere plateau are also made for the second and third resurrections on the roadway betwixt Oahspe and Zirdho. Next descending, it was that of Osiris established Vibra, which was now depleted of its people, that Fragapatti halted not to examine it, but proceeded to Asu direct. Here lie the mountains of Morn and Eve, and mountains of the moon and the sun, chiefs and stars, chief of which groups are, oh boy, here we go again. Sorry, guys, for the mispronunciations and projections. Ushado, Ushandera, Irizifi, Fararupa, Inzora, Aziria, Tude, Bumya, Duchia, Radiohita, Mazas Avio, a place of light inhabited by Hora, light of Volta, Ishio, Vata, Gakko, a place of Urs, signifying torments because of its darkness. This group of mountains is 90 miles higher than the earth mountains of Jayath. South of these are Ardana, Anyana, Iskata, Somaya, the double mountain Hamakine. Wow. Sorry, guys. I'm just going to skip what I cannot pronounce. I am getting very frustrated. 8 ranges of the round mountains. You can read this if you have the book. 4 peaks of Vinwanya. These extended over the earth, mountains of Shem, and have an altitude above the earth of 100 miles. I'm going to pause right there. I am hoping that my galactic friends upstairs can just give me this download implant, whatever they do, so I can project these words properly. It is very frustrating. Sorry, guys. Just give me the downloads. These are the oldest inhabited spirit worlds since the submersion of Pan, whose spirit worlds were carried up to the higher heaven, which hath since been called Harati. Extending east and west lie the group called the Red Man's Group. I'm just going to skip all this because I'm not. Which were the first place in heaven for colonizing the spirits of the Ihun race. The next group, here we go again with all the big names, to the west and south, which are Ihun Vara, So it's like this big. Yushoma. And a bunch of words this big. To the south in the group of the towering eagles, which are Ijtara, all of which groups were named by the gods and lords of the intermediate worlds during the time of Yaha language amongst mortals, being named after the amalgamation of the tribes of Ihins, every syllable in the former ages being one tribe, whereof the gods had made the testimony to endure from before the time of Fragapatti and Zarathustra, wherein it may be proven to mortals and spirits that this division of the spirit world was revealed to man at the time language was carried to its highest compounding. Besides these mountains in the lowest heavens, there were 4,000 others, the names of which were duly registered in the libraries of heavens by Thor and his sub-gods, but more than 2,000 of them were uninhabited, owing to the fact that Jehovah had not as yet created a sufficient number of people for them. But the mountains were mentioned above were those chiefly where at the time of Apollo the false gods and false lords set up kingdoms of their own. And the names of the mountains are also the names of the espoused unto themselves. Fragapatti said, alas, these heavens, who can measure the vanity of men and angels, that cut loose from their great spirit, endeavoring to set up kingdoms on their own account. Their places perish, sorrowfully histories. Behold these vagrant spirits strolling about or hiding amidst the ruins, ashamed of their rags and nakedness, prowling around, millions of them, hundreds of millions. Varathanga said, I thank thee, O Jehovah, that I am once again amongst the lowest. Keep me, O Father, amidst this darkness, till I shall never again forgive the lowest of my brothers and sisters. I behold thy wisdom, O Jehovah. But for these cycles of time, in the dawns of which thy Ethereans come down to witness the burden in hell, they would themselves forgive the horrors. Oh, that will not suffer me to rest till I help to rise them up to know thee and to glorify within thy works. And I'm going to leave it there. So I read 4 through 6. Praying for everybody in Texas, Oklahoma, and Arkansas who saw tornadoes, and the devastation was insane. And I am praying for you and giving you love and light and protection. I hope everybody has an amazing, incredible weekend. Be humble. Amish mindset. Please make sure you like, share, and subscribe to my channel. You can be the difference of helping me grow. Love and light, guys. And I'll see you on the next one. Bye.